The Abyss. That's what they call the other dimension. The place that tore open in humanity's world decades ago and rewrote everything. Portals appeared without warning. Monsters poured through. And in response, something shifted in the human genome, or the spiritual fabric of reality, or whatever the scientists were arguing about that week, and people started waking up with powers, skills, abilities, supernatural gifts from E rank to triple S rank. Your rank determined everything. Your rank was your value. But Taehyun never got his. Imagine spending 35 years of your life being told you're nothing. He waited through his teen, his 20s, his 30s. His parents died before they got to see what he became, which turned out to be a porter at 35 hauling expedition gear through monster-infested dimensional spaces. 15 years of staying behind the safety line. 15 years of watching people with powers do the thing he'd spent his whole life waiting to do himself. Maybe tomorrow, he kept telling himself. Tomorrow never came, until the day it came all at once and then immediately killed him. Taehyun is deep inside the abyss when Asmodeus appeared. Triple S rank monster. The kind that even the best hunters in the country struggle to contain. The kind that moves through a team of elite S rank and double S rank players like they're made of paper. Screams echoing off the stone walls of the dimensional space. The smell of blood and burning mana. Taehyun crouched behind a pillar, watching awakened fighters with 15 times his power getting destroyed by something that shouldn't even exist on this level of the dungeon. He can't fight it. He doesn't have a skill. He doesn't have a weapon that matters. He has a backpack and 15 years of experience at staying alive by staying out of the way. He tries to run. He doesn't make it. Asmodeus's mana catches him mid-step. Something in the monster's power, a shockwave, a residual blast, some overflow from a technique aimed at one of the actual fighters, removes Taehyun's leg. Not cut, not breaks, removed. One moment his leg is there and the next it isn't, replaced by a bleeding nothing, and he's on the ground behind the pillar with his back to the wall and his vision going gray. Damn it, is this the end? Without even awakening? This is where Taehyun cried. Not dramatically, just tears, the kind that come when something genuinely unjust is happening to you and you can't stop it. 35 years of waiting for a miracle and it's ending here, alone, behind a pillar, while the people with actual power died 10 meters away. He screamed. All of it. Every year of being called a loser. Every relative's house. Every packed bag in every dungeon. Every morning waking up without a skill. He screams it all at once, at nobody, at the universe. And then something happened. Dang. A status window appears in front of his eyes. Clean, bright, unmistakable. The kind that only awakened players can see. The kind he's watched other people interact with his entire adult life while he stood there invisible to its existence. Name: Kim Taehyun. Age: 35. Rank: E. Skill: Gate Creation UNIQUE. He laughed. He actually laughs, a hollow, empty, broken sound because of course the ability awakened now. Were the conditions a near-death experience? Was that the joke the universe had been building to for 35 years? But the skill description is strange. Gate Creation. Open a gate leading to the king. 1/1 uses. 1 use. He reads it again. 1 use, and it goes to someone called the king. He doesn't know what that means, but he knows his leg is gone and Asmodeus is 30 feet away and his mana is low enough that whatever this skill does, this is the moment. He activates it. The space between him and the SSS rank monster begins to warp. A gate open, not the kind he's familiar with from 15 years of portering, but something else. Something that feels older and stranger. A tear in the air that hums with energy he doesn't have a framework for. A man steps through it. Crimson hair, red eyes, mana swirling around him like a cloak of condensed fire. Clothes that don't belong to any era or culture Taehyun can identify. He looks at Taehyun, then looks at Asmodeus with the casual interest of someone who's found an interesting insect. Oh, hey, that's Asmodeus. Time stopped. Literally stopped. Taehyun can feel it. The specific stillness of everything except him and this stranger. Asmodeus is frozen mid-movement. The dying players are frozen. The world has been hit with a pause button that only this man controls. You summoned me? The man's voice is curious rather than annoyed. Like this is mildly interesting rather than catastrophically urgent. Taehyun, bleeding out from a missing leg, manages. Can you deal with that? He gestures at Asmodeus. The man considers the SSS rank monster with the specific nonchalance of someone who has genuinely never been threatened by anything. I could. Taehyun doesn't have the luxury of negotiating. His consciousness is a candle in a high wind. He asks what it costs. The man looks at him for a long moment. Something in his expression shifts. Not quite sympathy, not quite amusement. Something that's both and neither. All right, this must also be fate. I will use the king's power on you. His mana moves. It leaves his body and wraps around Taehyun. Red, blue, white, black, all at once. Impossible colors interacting in ways that shouldn't be possible. Not fire, exactly, but fire adjacent. It doesn't burn. The bleeding stops. The pain stops. Something enters him that he doesn't have words for. I recommend that you don't hope for a miracle like this to happen again, the man says. But if you manage to survive until we meet again, it may be of use to you. Player kiddo. Then he's gone. The gate is gone. Time resumes. Asmodeus's mana hits Taehyun like a tidal wave. Everything goes dark. dark, and then light. Taehyun opens his eyes. He's in a bed. A specific bed, the kind that belongs to a specific room, in a specific apartment, in a specific part of Seoul that he hasn't lived in since he was a teenager. His bedroom, the room he occupied when he was 19 years old, 16 years ago. He sits up. His leg is there. Both of them, fully attached, completely functional. He opens a status window. Name, Kim Taehyun. Age, 19. Rank, E. Skill, Devour, unique growth type. His age has changed from 35 to 19. He's back in time. Regressed, pulled backward through 16 years of his own life by the king's power to the exact moment in his history when, in the original timeline, things started going irreversibly wrong. He has a skill, not the gate creation skill that summoned the king. That's gone. It was a one-time thing, a key that unlocked a door. What he has now is what came through that door. Devour, a unique growth type ability that is classified as a skill, which means the system recognizes him, which means he is, for the first time in any version of his life, an awakened person. Devour, the user may devour the skills of others. Growth type, power scales with use. Current power, E rank. He reads it 3 times. 4, 5. He sits with the weight of it for a moment. 35 years of nothing, 16 years of futures borrowed back from the universe, and a skill that eats other people's ability. Then he hears a sound from outside his door. Someone is already in his apartment. Good. He has planned. Gungguk High School, 3rd year. The same building, the same hallway, the same particular social geography of a school that exists in a world where some 17-year-olds have combat abilities and some don't. Taehyun walks into his classroom on the first day back in his 19-year-old body, and the memories of both timelines overlap in his head like double-exposed film. In his original life, this year was when he started truly accepting that he might never awaken. The bullying was worst here. The isolation, the specific cruelty of being the kid without a skill in a school full of kids who were developing theirs. He remembers all of it. Every face, every name, every incident. 2 of those names come for him before he even makes it to his desk. Taesik Jo, ice hand skill, E rank, reinforces his hand with ice. Nothing impressive unless you're using it to punch an unawakened kid who can't fight back. Medium height, confident in the way people are when they've been the biggest fish in a very small pond for too long. In Taehyun's original timeline, Taesik made his school years consistently miserable. Bumoku, fireball skill, E rank, elemental type, can generate a small flame in his hand. Stockier than Taesik, louder, the one who liked an audience. Taehyun remembers the specific way Bumo used to activate the fireball near his face when he wanted to intimidate. They're at his desk before class starts. Same energy, same smirk, same casual assumption that the unawakened kid is still theirs to do whatever they want with. Here's the thing that's genuinely different this time. He spent 16 years working as a porter in monster-infested dimensional spaces. He carried bags through combat zones. He watched sulfur monosulfide ranked players get torn apart by things that barely registered Taehyun's existence. He's 35 years old on the inside, and what these boys are presenting as a threat doesn't even register on the scale his nervous system built over decades of real danger. He has absolutely zero patience for this. Taesik grabs his collar. Taehyun moves. The counter is brutal in its simplicity. Not a skill. Just 15 years of survival instinct and a body conditioned from carrying heavy loads in extreme environment. He drives 2 fingers at Taesik's eyes, not hard enough to blind, but hard enough to make the ice hand skill misfire as Taesik flinches. The skill activates incorrectly, the ice forming around Taesik's own hand in the wrong configuration, the cold turning inward. Frostbite. Immediate. If he doesn't get treatment, he might lose the hand. Bumo watches his friend collapse, processes this for approximately 1 second, and activates Fireball in pure panic. The ball of flame hovering in his palm, small and unstable, the way it always is when an inexperienced user hasn't mastered the technique. Taehyun walks directly toward it and stops 5 feet away. Shut up, he says. You can't even maintain it for long anyway. Exactly true. Bumo is burning through his mana trying to hold the fireball steady, and his body hasn't developed the control for sustained skill use yet. Taehyun can see it. In his original life he'd have flinched away, but now he can read the mana fluctuation in Bumo's hand the same way he learned to read monster tells in 15 years of dungeon work. He walks forward, grabs Bumo's collar, slaps him twice, controlled, aimed at making a point rather than causing serious injury. Bumo's body, overwhelmed by the aborted skill use and the shock of being hit, goes down in a heap. He steps back, looks at the rest of the classroom. Every student is watching, not intervening. They never did in either timeline, but watching with an expression he doesn't recognize from the original version of this moment. Not pity, not fear, something closer to recalibration. One person speaks up. A girl near the back of the crowd steps forward. Tall, over 170 centimeters, dark hair pulled into a neat ponytail, school uniform worn with the specific self-possession of someone who has never needed to think about how she presents herself. She looks at him with an expression that manages to be simultaneously unimpressed and paying very close attention. Are you really trying to kill them? You've already given them what they deserve. Her name is Ayoung Lim. In Taehyun's original timeline, she was the girl he assumed was just a well-off student with a good skill, the kind of person who existed in a different social orbit from him entirely. Someone with a comfortable future, someone the system rewarded, someone who never had to think about what it meant to be at the bottom. He'll learn later how wrong that was on several counts. Right now he just meets her eyes. Stay out of it, he says. This has nothing to do with you. He finishes making his point with Taesik, then goes to his seat, opens his status window where nobody else can see it, and starts thinking about what comes next. Because here's the thing, he didn't come back to the past to get revenge on school bullies. That was just the warm-up, the moment where the old muscle memory of being victimized got replaced by the new reality of what he actually is now. What he came back for is bigger. What he can do now, with a skill that eats other people's abilities and a mind full of 16 years of future knowledge, is enormous. He knows what's going to happen in the city. He knows what gates are going to open. He knows which raids will succeed and which ones will fail catastrophically. He knows which players will rise to become legends and which ones will burn out. He knows everything, and he has a skill that can take other people's everything and make it his. Devour. Current power E rank. Growth percentage 0%. 0%. Starting from nothing. Again, but this time, he has a direction. He needs a test subject, not a victim, not someone he wants to hurt, just someone who has a skill that his devour ability can interact with, under controlled condition, where he can observe what the power actually does without variables getting in the way. He finds the ideal candidate in the school's unofficial blind spot behind the gym, away from cameras, away from faculty, where a certain C-rank student named Hyuksu Bae has been operating as a mid-level bully for most of the year. Stone Skin skill, defensive type, reinforces the body with stone-like durability. In the original timeline, this was one of the guys who made Taehyun's life consistently unpleasant. Bigger than most of the class, with the specific confidence of someone who woke up with a decent ability and decided that made him important. In Taehyun's original life, there had been an impassable wall between them. Unawakened versus C-rank awakened. No contest, no chance, no hope. Now Taehyun has Devour. Hyuksu shows up looking to collect on whatever old score he thinks exists, sees Taehyun waiting, and does what bullies who've never been checked do. Assumes this is going to go the same way it always has. Good seeing you, Kim Taehyun, you loser. You hit your head or something? Taehyun doesn't bother with a speed. He activates Devour. The skill erupts from his body, black and red light, his mana spreading outward in a shadow circle that expands under Hyuksu's feet. The bigger student looks down, recognizes awakened mana manifesting, and his expression shifts from contempt to alarm. Bastard, you really did awaken. And then the circle contracts. The mana finds what it's looking for, Stone Skin, the ability that sits in Hyuksu like a gemstone of power, and begins pulling. Devour works by consuming, not copying, not borrowing, eating. The black-red energy chews at Hyuksu's stone skin at a fundamental level, and the sounds that come from it are not pleasant. Hyuksu screams, not from pain exactly. The skill targets the ability itself, not the body, but from the sensation of something being taken from him that he didn't know could be taken. Crunch. The stone skin break. Unique skill Devour complete. New skill acquire. Stone Skin, C rank. Devour experience 1%. His status page update. Stone Skin, a C rank defensive skill, is now listed in his own skill slot. He tests it immediately. Activates Stone Skin. His skin hardens. No visible chain, but the solidity is there. The reduced impact threshold. C rank defense. From a school bully in about 30 seconds. Hyuksu is on the ground. His stone skin is gone. Not suppressed. Gone. Devoured. Removed from his status entirely. He doesn't know that yet. He'll find out when the shock wears off. Taehyun looks down at him. So, that's how it works. The growth percentage ticking from 0% to 1% is significant. The system confirmed what he suspected. Devour levels up when he successfully consumes a skill. His rank and physical stats scale alongside every absorption, which means every skill he absorbs doesn't just add to his arsenal, it makes everything else stronger too. He's not going to stay E rank for long. He has plan, specific plan, built from 16 years of knowledge about this timeline's future events, and the first real one is already approaching. He can feel it in the city's mana fluctuation, something porters learn to read after enough years underground. A gate break is coming. There's one person from his original timeline who matters to Taehyun in the way that the word matters actually means, not professionally, not strategically, not because of what they can offer him. Jaeyoung Wang, younger than Taehyun by a few years, his cousin. Not a close relationship in the original timeline. Taehyun's isolation went deep, and Jaeyoung was always at the edge of his awareness rather than in the center of it. But they existed in the same world, and Jaeyoung was one of the only people who ever checked on him without wanting something in return. Here, at 19, Jaeyoung is still in school, a year behind, same city, different combat building. He has an ability called Dream D rank, a support type that in practice means he can affect the sleeping and waking states of targets around him. It's not a combat skill in any obvious way, and in the original timeline it never became one. He listened to what the assessors told him, didn't join the players, didn't pursue hunting, just existed around the edges of the awakened world the way most D-rank support users ended up doing. Taehyun has different plans for him, hopes built on knowledge of what Jaeyoung could have become if someone had pointed him in the right direction 16 years earlier. He calls right on schedule, the way Taehyun's memory predicted, nervous, careful, the voice of someone who heard the rumors about what happened with Taesik and Bummo and wants to know if his cousin is okay. I heard some stuff happened at school, Jaeyoung says. His voice is the same as Taehyun remembers, low, careful, perpetually slightly worried. You good? Taehyun tells him he's fine. The thing is, Jaeyoung continues, you don't usually fight back. Things are different now. A pause. Did you finally? Yeah, Taehyun says. I awakened. The silence on the other end of the phone has a quality that Taehyun recognizes, the specific mixture of relief and joy and complicated feelings that come when something you've been quietly hoping for someone finally comes true. Jaeyoung doesn't make a big deal of it. He just says, okay, in a voice that carries more weight than the word itself. They make plans to meet. Taehyun has reasons beyond family connection. He knows what's coming to this city in the next few days, and having someone he trusts who knows the area will matter. But first, the Gwangjin GU office gate break. In Taehyun's original timeline, this was the first major gate-related incident in the city in 10 years. A B-rank gate that manifested near the Gwangjin GU district office, a government building, civilian dense, terrible location for an abyssal event. The gate's rank escalated to A rank when the giant ogre appeared. An A-rank defensive player named Jaejin Lee tried to hold the perimeter. He failed. Civilians died. Another A-rank player eventually stopped the dungeon transformation. Taehyun remembers all of this. He was a porter at the time, in the original version of events, and heard about it afterward, through news reports and second-hand accounts from other porters who were nearby. He wasn't inside. He had no power to influence it. Now he does. He positions himself near the Gwangjin GU area 2 days before the predicted break, running the math. His devour is at 1 skill absorbed, stone skin. His overall rank has ticked up slightly, but he's still fundamentally weak compared to any actual awakened fighter. He needs more skills before the break happens. He has a day and a half. The challenge with growing quickly is access. Skills belong to awakened individuals. Awakened individuals have rights and the ability to report assault to law enforcement. He can't just walk up to random awakened citizens and eat their ability. The consequences would derail everything he's building. He needs targets who either can't report him or won't. The answer is the abyssal spaces themselves. Small-scale gate, not the major dungeon events that the player associations regulate and assign to guild, but the micro-events that pop up in blind spots and industrial zones and underground spaces. The kind that small-time criminals use as unofficial grinding spots. The kind that go unreported because everyone involved has reasons to stay off official record. 15 years as a porter taught him how to find these, how to read the mana signatures of unstable dimensional spaces, how to identify the specific visual distortion that precedes a micro-gate formation. Worker knowledge, not textbook knowledge, built through proximity to the real thing over a decade and a half. He finds one, a small pocket gate in an industrial area, the kind that spawns weaker monsters in controlled quantities, manageable enough that small groups of low to mid-level awakened sometimes use for informal leveling. He enters alone. What follows is several days of sustained, brutal, private grinding. The monsters aren't strong by dungeon standards, ogres and variant, E to C rank, predictable pattern, but Taehyun isn't fighting them to test his combat ability. He's using them to grow devour. Every skill they carry gets eaten. Monster abilities are different in texture from human skills, but the system processes them the same. He develops a rhythm. Enter. Clear the nearest cluster. Find a stronger target. Consume. Exit before mana runs critical. Rest. Return. Repeat. His stone skin gets tested constantly. He lets hits land on purpose, not masochism. Strategy. Defensive skills develop fastest when they're under load, and the only way to load them is to get hit. The monsters oblige. He tanks ogre-class strikes that in his original life would have been instantly lethal, and reads the feedback. Devour. Growth percentage 40%, 50%, 65%. The number climb. His rank adjusts. D rank, C rank. His physical stats update in real time with each rank adjustment. He can feel it, the specific sensation of strength returning to a body that's been running below its potential since the regression. His 35-year-old instincts and technique in a 19-year-old frame, now with a C rank physical baseline. Something that doesn't look like what it is. He adds more skill. A wolf monster's movement enhancement passive. A C rank ogre's strength amplification. His status page becomes something the original version of him would have looked at and wept. On the morning of the predicted gate break, Devour sits at 70%. He exits the pocket gate, checks his status. The break is today. Gwangjin GU. Starting B rank, escalating to A rank with the giant ogre. Jae-jin Lee will try and fail to hold the perimeter. Civilians will be in the blast radius. He knows all of this. He knows the geography of how it unfolds, the timing, the specific movement patterns of the giant ogre. He heads toward Gwangjin Gu. When a gate breaks, it doesn't announce itself. One moment the dimensional stability of a given location is within normal parameters. The next, a rift opens, a tear in the barrier between the abyss and the physical world, and monsters pour through into civilian space. Emergency response protocols activate. The player associations scramble. Guild hunters mobilize. And in the gap between the break and the response, people die. The Gwangjin Gu break is exactly as Taehyun remembers. The rift opens near the district office building. Terrible placement, maximum civilian exposure. Initial mana analysis reads B rank, manageable by a decent response team. The A rank defensive player Jae-jin Lee is on scene quickly. Guild behind him, perimeter shield established. Then the giant ogre comes through. Over 5 meters tall, club the size of a car door. A rank monster, the kind that breaks perimeter shields designed for B rank containment. Jae-jin Lee's barrier cracks on the first hit. On the second hit it shatters, and monsters pour out onto the city street. Taehyun is already in position. Not at the perimeter. He's unregistered, no license. Showing up at the active response team would create questions he can't answer yet. He's in the street network adjacent to the incident zone, positioned where his foreknowledge says the giant ogre will go. It comes. The monster moves west from the break point, exactly as his memory said it would, and finds the alleyway where Taehyun has already set up. The thing about the giant ogre is that it's massive and powerful but not particularly fast in enclosed spaces. Its size is an advantage in open ground and a liability in the urban grid. He doesn't fight it head on. He's C rank and this is A rank. The math doesn't work that way. But Devour is at 70% and there are smaller creatures from the break scattering through the street, and every one of them is an opportunity. He spends 20 minutes in those streets using the urban environment to manage the ogre's movement while systematically devouring the abilities of every creature he can get close enough to process. Each Devour pushes the percentage higher. 75%, 80%. A D rank Silver Fang Wolf runs at him from a side street. He activates Stone Skin, takes the bite on his forearm, grabs the wolf's neck while it's locked on, activates Devour. Movement passive consumed. Wolf drop. A C rank Ogre catches him with a glancing blow. He repositions, takes it through a narrow passage, drives hits into joints until it can't extend the arm, consumes the ogre's strength amplification. The system pings the message he's been watching for. Devour complete. Strength amplification C rank acquired. Then, a beat later, Devour experience 100%. Rank increase C to B, stats adjusted. B rank. He stops moving for 1 full second just to feel it. B rank. He was never B rank in the original timeline. He never had a rank at all. And now the system is telling him his physical stats have adjusted to reflect a B rank baseline, on top of the skills he's already carrying. He's genuinely dangerous now. He turns back toward the giant ogre. The giant ogre has been moving through the streets this whole time. Taehyun has been tracking its position through the sound, the specific crash of a building structural element giving way under a 5-meter creature's club, the scatter of car alarms triggered by displacement shockwave. He also knows where it's going. In the original timeline, the giant ogre moved west, then south, and was eventually intercepted by the responding A-rank player approximately 2 kilometers from the initial breakpoint. That player stopped the monster before it could trigger full dungeon transformation. But in the original timeline, 17 civilians died between the break and the intervention. Taehyun has no interest in those 17 people dying again. He cuts ahead of the ogre's projected path and waits in the street it's about to enter. The giant ogre comes around the corner and sees Taehyun standing alone in the middle of the road. A human in the middle of an empty street in a break zone, alone, with no obvious weapon. From the monster's perspective, this is a snack. It charges. Taehyun doesn't move until the last possible moment, then sidesteps B rank faster than the ogre's targeting expect. He lets the club slam into the street next to him, uses the moment of overextension to drive a hit into the back of the creature's knee. Stone Skin active. Strength amplification active. Everything stacked into a single strike. The ogre's leg buckles, not collapses. It's far too strong for that, but enough to shift its balance, enough to make the next swing slow and telegraphed. He's not trying to kill it. What he's doing is holding it in place, keeping it contained in this location, where civilian density is low, until the A-rank responders arrive. He also, in the 30 seconds he has before the ogre fully recovers, activates Devour on the 2 B-rank trailing monsters that have been following it through the street. Both skills consumed. Both add to his percentage. By the time the A-rank response team arrives, a combat player moving through the street grid with the efficient authority of someone who's done this before. The giant ogre is standing in the same location, contained by a force it can't identify, and 17 people who were supposed to die today are somewhere else. The responding player is A-rank and fast and very good at what they do. They don't need Taehyun's help to finish the giant ogre porter once on scene. What they do need, briefly, is to process what they're seeing. A person who is clearly engaging at rank level things without a guild affiliation, without a registered team, without any official identification. Who is this? Taehyun is gone before the question becomes official. He dissolves back into the streets with the invisibility that 15 years of porter work built into him, the specific skill of being present in a space and then simply not being there when it becomes inconvenient. Behind him, 17 people who were supposed to die today are still alive. That's what he came here for. The New Korea Player Association's chairman Jin Hee-ji is a man who has been doing this job long enough that the phrase unprecedented incident has lost most of its ability to disturb him. He smokes through the stack of paperwork about the Gwangjin GU break with the weary efficiency of a bureaucrat who's seen everything, except for one detail that keeps snagging his attention. An unidentified individual, not part of any response team, not from any registered guild, operating without a player license, was observed engaging in rank-level creatures during the break incident. Multiple witnesses describe the same person, young, male, acting alone, vanished before the responding A-rank players arrived. G stubs out his cigarette and reaches for another one. The only other person in this meeting is the guildmaster of the Nightwalker Guild, who arrives in his office wearing sunglasses indoors and a sky blue dress, projecting the specific energy of someone who is technically here as a courtesy and technically has more power in this room than the person who runs it. Her name is Yu Sung-an, S-rank. The Nightwalker Guild is one of the most prominent organizations in New Korea's awakened infrastructure. She didn't build it by being slow, and she didn't build it by missing things. Tell me about the unidentified individual, she says. The chairman does. Witness account. Combat behavior. Approximate rank display. Higher than anyone unlicensed at that age should show. Consistent across multiple independent observation. Unknown rank type. One analyst has noted. Unaffiliated. No record in the association's database. Yu-sung doesn't say anything for a moment. Find them, she says eventually. Not urgently, but definitively. Meanwhile, across the city, Taehyun is back at Gungguk High School on Monday, attending class, looking to all observers like a 17-year-old student who recently awakened and handled a couple of bullies. Normal enough framing. Doesn't hold up to scrutiny, but most people don't scrutinize. He has Jae-young, who keeps calling and has started asking more pointed questions about the gate break because someone in his social network was near the incident and described a person matching Taehyun's description. He has A-young Lim, who he's noticed watching him in class with the specific attention of someone running calculation. And he has a skill list that has doubled in the last 5 days and a devour percentage hovering at 8%, meaning the next rank threshold is visible on the horizon. He goes back to the pocket gate that evening. More work to do. There's a dungeon he found. Not a gate break, a proper dungeon, which in this world's terminology means an abyssal space that has stabilized into a persistent location rather than a one-time event. Small scale. Hidden. Its entrance sits in an industrial district behind a concealment layered by a pair of illusion-type abilities that Taehyun can now resist. His devour's passive effect of blocking external skill interference manifests as system notification. Skill detected. Illusion, B rank. Resisting with unidentified power. Resistance successful. Skill detected. OBLIS, B rank. Resisting with unidentified power. Resistance successful. He sees through both. Finds the entrance. Goes in. The dungeon is inhabited by ogre, more of them than the pocket gate he's been using, and with a boss at the center whose mana signature he reads before reaching it. Heavier, more deliberate, magic type rather than physical. Magic type bosses use status effect, illusions, debuffs, control skill, and his devour's resistance passive catches all of those and flags them before they land. He clears the exterior systematically, ogre by ogre, skill by skill, stone skin active throughout, devour used surgically, only on the ones carrying abilities worth absorbing. When the boss appears, it confirms his read, magic type, accessories on neck and wrist, the posture of something that controls its environment. It moves, status effects cascade, skill detected, blinding, B rank, resistance successful, skill detected, bleeding, B rank, resistance successful, skill detected, obedience, B rank, resistance successful. None of them land. The obedience skill, the dangerous one, the one that would have hijacked his nervous system, hits the passive resistance and bounces. The boss stares at him. In the limited intelligence of a dungeon monster, this registers as unexpected. Unfortunately, Taehyun says, "Your powers don't work on me." He activates Devour. The boss's entire magic type skill set gets consumed. Each ability added to his list. His percentage jumps substantially. Stripped of everything it was built around, the boss falls to physical combat. He walks out of the dungeon carrying 5 new skills and a Devour percentage that has made a meaningful jump. He sits against the industrial district wall in the dark and runs the math on how close he is to B rank becoming A rank. Not close enough yet, but faster than anyone in his original timeline ever reached from this starting position. He's on a bench near the industrial district when he sees it. 5 students in school uniforms surrounding a smaller kid. The specific choreography of school-age bullying, the encirclement, the casual kick, the laughter timed to the sounds of impact. The kid in the middle is trying to fight back and can't. Taehyun watches from the bench. He sat down to rest. He's tired from the dungeon run. He doesn't have time for interruption. He watches anyway. Garbage like this stays garbage. You think it's easy for something like you to awaken? The surrounding students making the specific kind of comments that awakened kids make about unawakened one, with the casual authority of people who've never had to think about what those words feel like from the other side. The smaller kid swings despite being kicked. You cowardly bastard. Once I awaken gets kicked in the stomach again. Taehyun's jaw tightened. He was on the floor of a version of this scene. Not this specific part, not these specific people, but this exact dynamic in countless iterations over years and years. The thing about spending 35 years without power in a world built around it is that you become sensitized to the specific quality of cruelty directed at powerlessness. You recognize it the way someone who's been hungry for a long time recognizes hunger in other people's faces. He gets up, walks over, no urgency in his stride, just a person walking toward a group of people. The lead bully turned. What do you want, man? Taehyun looks at the kid on the ground, then back at the group. Move, not stop, not leave him alone. Move, a directional command. The implicit meaning, clear out of my sight, now. The lead bully laughed. Of course he does. Taehyun hits him once. Stone skin active, B rank strength. The specific efficient impact of someone who's been hitting things that would kill these kids without thinking about it. The laughter stopped. The rest of the group recalibrates. Something in how this person moved, too controlled, too fast, wrong for their apparent age, triggers the survival assessment that every partially awakened teenager has running in the background. This is something they can't outpower. They leave. The kid on the ground looks up. 14 maybe, face bruised, eyes bright with equal parts pain and defiant. Not scared of Taehyun, just hurt. Taehyun crouches down to his level. You awake? He asks. The status window kind, not the literal kind. The kid shakes his head. I don't have any skills yet. A pause. That's fine, Taehyun says. Being unawakened doesn't make you worthless. Anyone telling you otherwise is wrong. He leaves before questions can be asked. He doesn't do this for gratitude. He doesn't do this because it's on any agenda. He does it because 35 years of his original life were shaped by moments exactly like this one. And the one certain thing he knows is that the version of the world where that kid keeps getting kicked until he gives up on himself is worse than the version where someone stepped in. He goes back to the dungeon. She stops him after class. Not dramatically. Ayoung Lim doesn't do dramatic in the way that performs itself. She just falls into step beside him in the hallway like she has the right to be there. A quality she projects with such natural authority that people rarely question it. You were at the Gwangjin GU gate break, she says. Not a question. Taehyun doesn't slow down. Were you? A B. That's not a denial. No. They walk for a moment in the negotiated silence of two people deciding how much to show each other. Taehyun knows who Ayoung is an outline. In his original timeline, she existed in a completely different social tier. A high achiever, clearly tracked for exceptional things. A person whose path never intersected with his because their social positions were opposite ends of the same spectrum. Here, with the pattern-reading instincts his Porter years built into him, he can see things about her that the original version of him had no access to. She's watching him with the specific focus of someone running an assessment rather than just having a conversation. The casualness is practiced, not natural. She thought about this interaction before having it. Your rank is B, she says. You registered last week as a late awakening, unknown type. Top 20 percentile on the physical assessment. She checked his record, which means she has access to things most students don't, which means connections most students don't have. Why does that matter to you? He asks. I'm trying to figure out what you are. A student. Students don't contain a rank gate breaks by themselves. He looks at her for the first time since she fell into step. She's meeting his eyes with the composure of someone who knows they're right and is comfortable waiting for the other person to acknowledge it. She's also, and this matters, not here to expose him. If she wanted to report what she'd seen to the association, she would have done it already. The fact that she's here, asking him directly, means something else is driving this. What do you want? He asks. She considers her answer. I want to know if you're going to be someone I need to know. Not someone she wants to know. Someone she needs to. The distinction is honest in a way that's more interesting than anything she could have said. Probably, Taehyun says. They part without another word, but she's calculating. Whatever she's adding up, Taehyun can tell from the expression she's wearing when she turns away. She doesn't dislike the sum. Yu Sung-on finds him first. Not in person. She sends a representative. A message through the Player Association's unofficial channel. The Nightwalker Guild is interested in speaking with him at his convenience. In the awakened world's infrastructure, the Nightwalker Guild occupies a specific tier, elite, selective, managed by an S-rank guildmaster with a reputation for identifying talent early and being selective about what she does with that talent. Being on their radar at 19, a month after awakening, would normally be treated as an extraordinary opportunity by anyone in Taehyun's position. He's not sure he wants it. Not yet. Future knowledge knowledge comes with context. He knows who Yu Sung-an is. He knows the Nightwalker Guild's history across the next 16 years. Some of what he knows is good, some is complicated, and the way certain people try to use organizations like this as vehicles for things they weren't built for keeps him cautious. He doesn't decline the meeting. Declining would make him a target of exactly the kind of curiosity he doesn't want. He goes, keeps his cards close, observe. The guild headquarters is in a commercial tower downtown, the kind of location that projects stability without being ostentatious about it. Yu Sung-an's office is on the top floor. She meets him in sunglasses indoors. Tae-hyun files this as deliberate rather than habit. The glasses maintain an asymmetry of perception in every interaction. She can see him. He can't fully read her. You're younger than I expected, she says. Most people are. A slight shift at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile. She asks about the gate break. He gives her a version of the truth. Present in the area. Saw the situation. Made some decision. Omits how he knew where to be. Lets her build the narrative she already has. Young, recently awakened, unusually capable, unknown type. She asks about his skill. Devour, he says. Unique ability. Growth type. She doesn't react visibly. But the sunglasses can't fully hide what's recalibrating behind them. Growth type uniques are rare, she says. I know. The association will want you tracked. In a guild. Under a structure that can develop you properly. He looks at her. The Nightwalker Guild is legitimate. Yu Sung-an is, in the framework of this world, one of the good ones. But formal guild membership at this stage creates obligations and visibility that he isn't ready for. I appreciate the interest, he says. I'm not ready for that yet. She doesn't push. Which is information. She's patient, thinking long-term, not threatened by not yet. The offer is open, she says. He leaves. He files the conversation under. Will matter later. Devour hits the next milestone. He's in the pocket dungeon, third clear of the day, when the notification arrived. Devour experience, 100%. Rank adjustment, B right pointing arrow 8, physical stats updated. Mana capacity updated. A rank. He stopped, breathed, 1 full second. A rank. In his original life, he watched A-ranked players operate from a safe distance, reading their auras the way you read weather after enough years of working near it. He knew what it felt like from the outside, the elevated mana output, the way combat moved differently at that tier, the casual destruction that A ranks applied to things that would kill B rankers cleanly. Now it's his. He flexes his hand, activates stone skin, not from necessity, just to feel the difference. The defensive layer at A rank is categorically different from what it was at C rank. Denser, more responsive, protective capacity nearly triple. He doesn't stay in the dungeon to celebrate. He sits down, opens his status page, and runs the calculation. Given current skill count, Devour's growth rate, and what he knows is coming in this city's timeline, how far can he get before the major events start accelerating? Answer: he needs to be at A rank and climbing, ideally approaching S rank threshold before the things that killed him in the original timeline start manifesting. He needs better skill, A rank abilities from A rank sources, and for that he needs player association clearance, which means he needs to stop being anonymous. He thinks about Yu Sung-an's open offer. He thinks about the formal assessment coming up at Gungguk High. He thinks about Young Lim, who has been quietly mapping him for 2 weeks. He makes a list, then goes to sleep, genuinely, for the first time in several days. Gungguk High's formal awakening assessment cycle comes around. All students who've registered as awakened in the past 6 months get evaluated, mana output measured, skills classified, physical stats benchmarked, rank officially recorded. Taehyun registered immediately after the regression at a conservative C rank. He's been flying under that rating while his actual power has more than doubled. The new assessment will update the record. He can't hide from it and doesn't want to. Being radically underrated creates its own problem. What he can do is control the narrative around what people see. He shows up on assessment day and moves through the physical stations without making the assessors work too hard. His stats at A rank register as exceptional by civilian adjacent metric, but exceptional normal rather than alarming. He controls the mana output reading, doesn't show the ceiling, lands at A rank baseline. They confirm the rank. The gym goes slightly quiet, not dramatically. There are always A rank students in competitive school, but combined with everything that's been circulating about Taehyun since the first week, the fight, the gatebreak rumors, the general wrongness of someone who moves and thinks like he does at 19. The A rank announcement lands differently than it would for anyone else. Young Lim is 2 stations over. She hears the announcement, doesn't turn to look at him immediately. That's not how she does things. She keeps moving through her own assessment. Her result, B rank with exceptional trajectory projection. In the original timeline, Taehyun had no context for what B rank exceptional trajectory meant. Now he does. Her growth over the next year will accelerate well past what the school assessment can measure. She's not B rank in any way that implies a ceiling. She's someone at the beginning. He knows where where that trajectory goes. She doesn't yet. In the hallway afterward, she makes brief eye contact. She's filed the A rank result alongside everything else she's been collecting. Congratulations, she says, entirely neutral. You too. I didn't expect A. I know, he says, which means, I know your potential and A isn't anywhere near where you're going. She can't parse that from 2 words, but something in his tone makes her pause. What do you know? She asks, quiet, not aggressive, genuinely asking. Enough, he says, and walks away. She watches him go with an expression that is not satisfied by this answer and will not be letting go of the question. The Yahello, not just monsters, a category of abyssal intelligence that operates above the standard monster classification. Not creatures driven by hunger or territory. Entities with goals, communication, and the capacity to move through the human world with intent rather than instinct. Operatives, assassin, the kind of thing the association's classified report, the ones Taehyun was never supposed to read but did, because 15 years of being treated as invisible makes people careless with paperwork, describe with the specific careful language of institutions that are genuinely unsettled. One is operating in Seoul right now. In the original timeline, this was classified and controlled until it wasn't, connected to a series of incidents that left multiple high-ranked players with damage they never fully recovered from. The association contained it at significant cost, about 6 months into the timeline. Taehyun has a head start. The Yahello uses a B-rank stealth skill, moves through populated areas with civilian concealment, targets players who are isolated from their guild structures. What it wants isn't clear from the original record, but what it does is cut down awakened humans with deliberate, specific method. He starts tracking it, not with any apparatus the association would recognize as surveillance, just the mana sensing capacity his porter years built and his A-rank upgrade amplified. The ability to feel directional mana flow changes in his immediate environment. Passive threat detection that doesn't depend on line of sight. He finds the Yahello's movement signature 3 days after he starts looking. It's in the city's civilian grid, moving slowly, hunting the way a patient predator hunts. The stealth skill keeps it invisible to most people, but Taehyun's Devour has a passive resistance to external skill influences, and when the stealth field passes close enough, he catches the edge of the mana trail. He follows, maps its pattern, identifies where it's converging toward an independent A-rank player who operates without guild affiliation, who has been in the area recently. He positions himself between the Yahello and its target and lets the situation come to him. The Yahello drops its stealth when it strikes. It has to. The attack requires full power, and maintaining concealment during execution costs more than the precision allows. For a fraction of a second, as the blade extends toward the A-rank player's back, the Yahello is fully visible. Taehyun hits it in that fraction of a second, not with a skill. With his body, stone skin fully active, strength amplification running, A-rank physical stats behind it. He drives himself into the Yahello's arm, disrupting the strike, absorbing the blade deflection with his hardened skin. The weapon slides off him rather than through him. The Yahello is knocked sideways, its stealth up again, but its position no longer concealed because Taehyun can feel the mana trail regardless. The A-rank player spins at the impact, weapon out. The reflexes of someone who has been operating at that level for years and doesn't need to see the full picture to respond to part of it. Stealth, right side, Taehyun says, then steps toward the mana trail and activates Devour. The Yahello can't maintain stealth while Devour is active on it. The consumption process generates a visible black-red mana circle that reveals its position. For the seconds the consumption takes, the Yahello is fully visible, and an A- ranked combat player who is extremely good at what they do does not need more than a revealed target and a quarter second. The Yahello goes down. Taehyun absorbs the stealth skill. B rank. His list update. Devour complete. Stealth B rank acquired. He files this as one of the most significant absorptions so far. Concealment that lets him move through environments without detection, combined with everything else in his build. This becomes something that doesn't fit any classification the association has. The A-rank player looks at him. He's been taking in Taehyun's appearance, his age, the aftermath of Devour's visible mana manifestation, the fact that a school-aged kid just intervened in an assassination attempt aimed at him. His name is Hyunsu An, the player who stopped the giant ogre in Gwangjin Gu. In Taehyun's original timeline, a significant figure in the events that defined the next era, a combat player with a reputation that the association used as a reference point, someone whose choices across the next several years cascaded into outcomes that mattered. He's glad Hyunsu is alive. Who are you? Hyunsu asks. Nobody important yet, Taehyun says. Then, the association should know one of these is operating in the city. They're targeting a rank isolate. He leaves. Behind him, Hyunsu An watches him go with the expression of someone who has just had the ground shift slightly under their understanding of what's possible. Everyone who sees Taehyun operate gets that expression eventually. The stealth skill changes his operational range completely. Not because invisibility is the most powerful thing in his kit. It isn't, not not compared to devour itself or stone skin at its current development, but it removes the primary constraint that's been limiting him. He can only act where he can be. With stealth, he can go places. He begins using it to access spaces he's been excluded from. The lower levels of the Player Association's public records facilities, which technically require guild affiliation for full access. The offline meetings of two lesser guilds he has reason to observe. The street-level networks where under-the-table dungeon access gets traded among players who want to stay off official record. What he's building is a map of the city's awakened infrastructure, of who owes whom and what agreements exist and where the pressure points are that can be moved on. In his original timeline, he was invisible in a different way, ignored by systems that assigned him no rank and no value. Here, he's invisible because he chooses to be. That's a completely different relationship with the condition. Through this mapping, he finds 3 more Avelians operating in New Korea's territory, not all in Seoul, 2 in other major cities, 1 regional. The association knows about 1. They don't know about the others. He passes the information to the association anonymously, the right format, delivered to the right administrative channel, without anything that traces back to him. Not Yu Sung-on directly. Chairman Jin Hee-ji's office, which he now knows enough about to navigate the information land. 2 of the 3 untracked Avelians are located and neutralized within the week. Nobody knows where the tip came from. Ji smokes an extra cigarette over this and makes note. Jae-young's formal awakening assessment is coming up. This is the thing Tae-hyun has been carefully thinking about since the regression. In the original timeline, Jae-young registered as D-rank, dream skill, support type, not suited for combat in any obvious way, never pursued further development. He listened to what the assessors recommended, existed around the edges of the awakened world without ever fully being in it. Tae-hyun has different plans for him. Not his plans, Jae-young's, the ones he never got to find out he had. He knows what Jae-young could be, because he's spent 16 years watching the awakened world operate and building the kind of understanding that only comes from long proximity without power. He's seen D-rank users with the right development become things the system didn't predict. He's seen dream-type abilities, rare, underestimated, generally filed under, nice but non-critical, develop into something genuinely powerful when someone actually works with them. More than that, he knows Jae-young, the intelligent, the loyalty, the way he processes things when nobody's telling him what to think. Qualities that in the original timeline never got pointed at anything meaningful. He goes to him. Your skill is dream, he says. It's going to register as D-rank support. The assessors will suggest non-combat career track. Jae-young looks at him. How do you know that? Because I know you. And I know what that skill can do if someone actually develops it. He pauses. Don't let them write it off. Don't let them put you in a box. Your skill has applications they're not going to bother explaining. A quiet moment. The kind that's deciding whether to believe something. Why are you telling me this? Because nobody told me that kind of thing when it would have mattered. He doesn't say, because in my original life, you were one of the only people who never looked at me like I was nothing. But Jae-young, who has always been perceptive in the way quiet people get perceptive, probably hears some version of it anyway. The assessment happens on schedule. Dream skill, D rank. The assessors recommend support tracks, exactly as predicted. Jae-young doesn't sign up for any of them. He comes back a week later and asks what he should be developing. The conversation that follows takes a long time and goes into territories Tae-hyun doesn't fully have answers to yet. But it starts. That's what matters. The specific weight of future knowledge is this. You know which disasters are coming, and you have to decide how much to do about each one. The Scorn Guild, mid-tier, formally registered, apparently legitimate. In Tae-hyun's original timeline, their involvement in a series of incidents over the next 18 months, specifically, deliberate suppression of lower-ranked awakened individuals through financial exploitation and threat, directly contributed to outcomes that killed people he knew. Not famous people, not players with record, workers, porters, people who existed at the same level he did and who didn't make it. In the original timeline, the association took 2 years to crack down on them. He has stealth, he has access, he has all the time he needs. He spends 3 weeks systematically infiltrating the Scorn Guild's communication infrastructure. Not hacking, not anything that requires technology he doesn't have. Just standing in rooms with stealth active while conversations happen that he technically has no business hearing. What he finds confirms everything his memory told him. The Scorn Guild is a racket. Mid-tier status used to exploit lower-ranked awakened individuals. Cuts of dungeon earnings. Suppressed registration of certain abilities to eliminate competition. Influence maintained through the specific fear of what they'll do to players who try to operate independently in their claimed territory. He builds a file. Anonymous, delivered through the channels he's developed, formatted for what the association needs to act on. 2 things happen. The association opens an investigation. Will take months to complete, but it opened. And someone at the Scorn Guild, someone sharper than most of the people Tae-hyun has assessed in this operation, notices that internal information is leaving through channels that should be airtight, and starts looking for the source. He files this under developing problem. Not immediate, but developing. The New Korea Player Association runs an annual youth tournament. Registered awakened individuals between 17 19 and 21. Multi-stage elimination. Public, broadcast, sponsored by guilds who use it as a scouting event. Top performers get formal guild offers, association contract, development resources. In Taehyun's original timeline, this was where the next generation of major players established themselves. He watched it from the outside, watched names he'd later recognize in the raid documentation, in the A&S rank classifications, in the casualty reports from events years later. He watched the beginning of their stories without knowing that's what they were. He's entering. The decision is strategic. He needs visibility with the right people. He needs the association watching him officially, which requires performance in a monitored context. He needs the guild offers, not to accept them, but to have them, so the choice of affiliation is his to make. He also needs opportunities to face opponents with genuine ability level. Registration goes through without incident. The tournament committee flags unaffiliated A ranks the way they always do, with interest and a secondary review that confirms everything checks out technically. Ayoung Lim is registered. Unsurprising. What surprises him slightly is the third name from their school's age bracket, Jaeyoung Wang. D rank, dream skill, support type. He calls Jaeyoung that night. You're entering the tournament? A pause. Then, slightly defiant. You said don't let them put me in a box. Taehyun is quiet for a moment. Yes, I did, so I'm not. The defiance in his voice, the specific sound of someone deciding to stop being afraid of the system's verdict on them, is something Taehyun recognizes from the inside. He spent 35 years not making that decision. He understands exactly how long it can take and what it costs when something finally tips the balance. Good, he says. Train the dream skill for range extension this week. The tournament format has openings where your ability has more leverage than a combat type. He hangs up, sits with the particular feeling of having moved something. The tournament venue is a sanctioned arena, monitoring systems, broadcast capability, safety constraints that limit kill potential skills from going full force. The crowd is guild scout, association officials, school administrators, and the specific community of awakened world followers who track these events like sport. Taehyun's first round bracket, a B-rank combat type from a competing school. Standard power combination, physical enhancement plus strike amplification. Regional tournament record that makes him a comfortable favorite in this matchup. The match lasts 45 seconds, not because Taehyun is performing. His combat style is porter trained, inherently efficient, minimizing wasted movement, targeting the leverage points that end confrontations rather than prolong them. The B-rank opponent has power and some technique and no experience fighting anything in Taehyun's actual tier. He doesn't use devour. Deliberate. In a monitored tournament, having the system announce on record that he's absorbing competitors' skills would create exactly the kind of attention he doesn't want around his ability. He fights purely on physical stats and developed combat skills, stone skin, movement enhancement, the strength stack he's been building. A rank physical versus B-rank physical, experienced technique versus school technique. The opponent goes down. Taehyun walks off the arena floor without ceremony. In the press area, 2 guild scouts are already annotating their note. A third is on a phone call he's trying to make look casual. Jaeyoung's first round match is in the afternoon bracket. His opponent, a C-rank offensive type from a school with a strong combat program. On paper this matchup should end in a minute. Jaeyoung doesn't fight the way the bracket predict. Dream is a skill that works on consciousness, specifically on the bridge between waking and sleeping state, the zone where perception is malleable and attention can be redirected. At D-rank, range is limited and duration is short, but he's spent 2 weeks thinking about range extension and has found an application more precise than anything the standard classifications expect from this skill tier. He doesn't try to put his opponent to sleep. What he does is narrower, a momentary interruption of the targeting reflex, a half-second disruption in the precise moment before the strike mechanics engage. Half a second is enough. His opponent swings. The strike goes wrong, angle off, power dispersed incorrectly, the follow-through that should have ended the match becoming a miss. Jaeyoung is already moving, having timed the disruption precisely to the moment of maximum commitment. It's not a dominant performance. He gets hit twice and both hits hurt and he looks like exactly what he is, a D-rank support type who found one very specific trick and executed it. But he wins. In the stands, Taehyun watches without reacting visibly, but the specific internal sensation of seeing someone do the thing they weren't supposed to be able to do, seeing Jaeyoung standing on that arena floor with a result nobody predicted and the expression of someone who didn't know they could do this until they did, settles somewhere in his chest and stays there. Ayoung Lim's first round is the one the scouts have been waiting for. Her school's faculty has been careful about discussing her in detail, that particular institutional care that exists around genuinely exceptional student, managing attention without letting it overwhelm before the student is ready. But her mana assessment is logged in the system, and people who track this tournament watch numbers. B-rank current, exceptional trajectory projection, skill type, multi-element, unusual configuration. She fights like someone who's been training seriously and privately for longer than most students her age, which Taehyun knows is accurate. In the original timeline, her development was accelerated by family-connected training resources that the public records don't fully capture. She has technique on top of her stat, the specific combat intelligence of someone who's spent time actually thinking about what abilities are for. Her opponent, B-rank physical type, larger, confident in the way people are before they've met anything they couldn't outpower. She wins in under 2 minutes, not 45 seconds, not the clean erasure of Taehyun's match, something with more texture, a genuine fight that she wins through reading her opponent better than he reads her, through timing and angles and the patient application of skills he can't anticipate. There's artistry in it that isn't in Taehyun's approach. He fights efficiently. She fights beautifully. He's watching from the competitor holding area. She passes him on the way back from the arena floor without looking at him, but her route goes within 2 meters of where he's standing, not the most direct path back to her assigned waiting area. He files this under. She's still running calculation. Taehyun's quarterfinal is his first genuinely interesting opponent, an A rank from one of Seoul's elite guild-affiliated school, dedicated combat coaches, skill development specialist, the kind of program that produces players who go straight into major guilds upon graduation. His name is Park Suhan. He has a combination the scouts have been noting: enhanced physical at A rank, a barrier skill for defense, and a strike amplification that makes his attacks escalate in power with each sequential hit. The sequential escalation is the interesting part. Each strike more powerful than the last, up to a theoretical ceiling that nobody in the tournament's history has made him reach. Nobody has taken enough hits from him to see what the top of the escalation looks like. Taehyun is genuinely considering it, not only because the sequential amplification is a skill he wants to absorb, though he does, but because seeing the escalation curve in practice, up close, against himself, will tell him things about how it functions that the tournament records don't capture. The match starts. Suhan is good, faster than previous opposition, more precise, the economy of movement that comes from A rank physical combined with real training. First strike hits Taehyun's stone skin heavier than it should, the escalation starting from contact 1. Taehyun takes 4 hits, each one heavier. Stone skin holds, but it's working. He's tracking the pattern internally, cataloging the escalation curve. On the 5th hit, he adjusts, not by blocking, by redirecting. Porter training includes something that combat programs often skip: how to use another person's momentum without superior strength. It's a survival technique built from years of needing to move things that would kill him if he let them land cleanly. Crude compared to formal martial art, fast and energy efficient. He redirects the 5th strike into the arena wall. The built-up escalation hits the wall instead of him. The concussive force is visible to everyone watching. Suhan is off balance. Taehyun activates Devour. The arena monitoring systems flag the unique skill activation. Expected, it'll appear in the tournament record. The black-red circle expands. Suhan, who has never had this done to him and has no resistance to counter it, loses the sequential amplification in the 5 seconds the consumption take. Devour complete. Sequential strike amplification. A rank acquired. He ends the match. Suhan is still standing. Losing a skill doesn't destroy a combatant, but the psychological impact of having an ability taken in real time, in front of an audience, in a showcase tournament, lands differently than a physical defeat. The guild scouts watching are not taking quiet notes anymore. The semi-final pairing is announced. Taehyun vs Ayoung Lim. The bracket generated this honestly. Both of them won their round. The mathematics of a well-seeded bracket resolved toward the two most interesting competitors meeting in the middle. Taehyun stares at the bracket. In the original timeline, he never competed with Ayoung Lim, never fought her, never had any real interaction with her at all, because their social positions were opposite ends of a spectrum that didn't allow for intersection. He has no clean foreknowledge of this match. He has her assessment data, his observation of her first round, his knowledge of her skill type, but the actual shape of how she fight, the specific patterns, the strategic tendencies, what she does when pushed, is something he'll have to work out in real time. This is genuinely new territory. The arena is more full than it was for earlier round. Word got around. She comes out composed. The specific inner stillness of someone who has been preparing for exactly this. He comes out looking the same as always, which is the appearance of a student, which isn't what he is, which is the gap between surface and reality that defines everything about this version of his life. They face each other across the arena floor. She speaks first, low enough that the crowd can't hear. I've been watching you fight, she says. You take hits on purpose. Yes. For information. Yes. 15 years as a porter, she says. He goes very still. You move wrong for your age. Your defensive instincts are trained, not natural. Porters learn to read monster tells from years underground. You use that in combat. You read people the same way. She figured it out. Not the regression, not the specific mechanic, but the shape of where his knowledge comes from. She looked at the pattern and followed it backward. He looks at her with new respect. That's very good, he says, meaning it. So what are you? She asks, still quiet, still composed, but something underneath that is genuinely asking. Someone who's trying to fix things, he says, before they go wrong. She doesn't ask what thing. She's not that kind of person. She doesn't ask the next question until she's ready for the answer. The official calls the start. They fight. 14 minutes. Extraordinary for A rank competitors in this format. Neither of them is trying to dominate immediately. Both reading, both cataloging, building a map of the other person's actual capabilities from behind the surface presentation. She has the multi-element skill and she tests his defenses in sequence, rotating through elements to identify what stone skin absorbs well and what it absorbs less well. Trying to find the gap. He lets her find some gap, the unimportant one, the ones that will confirm incorrect conclusions about his limitation. He activates Devour in the 12th minute. She sees it coming. The black-red circle under her feet. She's watched him use it on Suhan. She moves immediately, repositioning off the circle's edge, breaking the consumption chain by simply not being where the skill needs her to be. Smart. Very smart. He adjusts, uses the sequential strike amplification to drive a combination that backs her into the position Devour needs. She has to commit fully to her barrier skill to absorb the hit, which costs her the mobility she needs to keep breaking his contact. The consumption completes in the 14th minute. Devour complete. Multi-element skill. A rank. Acquired. Note. Complex skill. Full integration pending. She's standing across the arena, her multi-element ability gone. The tournament's scoring system processes the consumption as a decisive advantage and the official calls the result. She looks at him across the distance. He expects anger. Gets something else. A slow exhale. The physical response to having anticipated the outcome and then having it arrive. Then, you knew I'd counter the first circle. You're not someone who only has one response, but you planned for that. Yes. The crowd is loud around them. They're in it but separate from it. The things that are going to go wrong, she says. How bad is it? He looks at her for a moment. The question is exactly the right question. Bad enough that I can't afford to waste the time I have, he says. Something settles in her expression. Not resignation. Resolution. Then stop wasting my time, she says, and tell me what you need. The tournament final is the next morning. His opponent, the remaining semi-finalist from the other bracket, a rank guild-affiliated program, combat style built on sustained pressure and resource attrition. The kind of fighter who wins by making opponents run out of options before he runs out of power. Against someone with Devour and Stone Skin and an A- rank physical baseline who spent 15 years learning to operate in situations where running out of resources is lethal, it is not a good matchup. The final lasts 7 minutes. He doesn't use Devour. He doesn't need to. He lets the attrition strategy play out for 4 minutes, absorbing hits on Stone Skin, giving his opponent the impression that the resource drain is working. Then he closes the distance and ends it with the cold efficiency that 15 years of porter instinct built into him. His opponent is still standing when the match is called. He's just out of option. Tournament winner, Kim Taehyun, unaffiliated, A rank, unknown unique skill classification, age 19. 3 guild representatives approach him formally in the post-tournament reception, each with prepared offers, each presenting their organization as the ideal development environment for his specific skill type. He listens to all 3, politely, takes their contact information, commits to nothing. Yu Sung-an is also in the reception area. She doesn't approach with an offer. She made hers once and left it open, and that's how she operates. But she catches his eye briefly across the room, and the expression she's wearing translates without difficulty. Whenever you're ready. She finds him afterward. Not at the reception. That's too public. He finds a note in his school locker 2 days later, a location and a time, written in the specific handwriting of someone who doesn't often write notes by hand and chose to for reasons she's not explaining. He goes. She's there first. A park near the school, a bench with sight lines in all directions. She picked this location deliberately. The way someone who thinks about threat environments picks location. This tells him something about her training she hasn't mentioned directly. They sit. She looks at the trees. He looks at nothing in particular. Tell me about what's going to happen, she says. Not a question. An expectation. She has decided, between the semi-final arena and this moment, that she is going to become someone who knows what Taehyun knows, and she's stating that as a fact rather than a request. He thinks about how much to say, not about whether to tell her. He's been thinking about this since before the semi-final. Ayoung Lim in the original timeline faced what was coming without warning, without support, and was shaped by that into something harder than she should have had to become. He has information that could change that trajectory. He tells her the shape of it, not every detail, not names and dates and specific events. That kind of specificity either isn't believable or constrains responses in ways that make things worse. But the shape, the abyssal threat pattern, is going to escalate significantly within the next 2 years. There are forces operating in the world that the player association's current structure isn't designed to handle. The things Taehyun has been doing since the beginning of the school year, the gate break intervention, the Evelian information, the Scorn Guild file, are all preparation for what's coming. She listens without interrupting, the same composure she brings to everything, but he can see her processing underneath it, the specific internal work of someone integrating large amounts of new information into an existing worldview and adjusting where the worldview needs to shift. Why now? She asks, when he's finished. Because you figured out the porter thing. You'll keep pulling at it until you get to the rest. I'd rather tell you than have you build an incomplete picture from fragment. And the part you're not telling me? There's more. There always is. When you need it, I'll give it. She considers this, the particular Ayoung Lim version of consideration, Methodical, patient, not rushing. What do you need from me? She asked. Right now? Nothing. You have your own development to focus on. Your trajectory is going to take you somewhere significant. A pause. But knowing you're aware of the larger picture, knowing that when things start moving, you'll understand why, that matters. And the tournament? She's asking why he took her skill. I needed it. And you needed to see what you're dealing with. He meets her eyes. If I can't take your skill in a controlled arena match, I'm not ready for what uses skills that are worth taking. This is honest in a way that doesn't fully explain itself, but it's enough. She nods one. They stand up and go separate directions without agreements or handshake. But something has shifted in the air between them. The specific quality of two people who have decided to move in the same general direction on separate trajectory. Hyun-soo-an shows up at Taehyun's school. Not inside. He's an adult player and the school administration would have questioned. But outside, after school hours, sitting on the wall across from the main gate with the casual patience of someone who has decided to wait as long as it takes. Taehyun sees him on the way out. He crosses the street. Hyun-soo is a few years older than him, late 20s, the kind of physical presence that A-rank combat development builds in people who've been operating at that level for years. He looks at Taehyun with the expression of someone who has spent weeks trying to identify him and has finally made enough progress to show up in person. You're the kid from the gate break, he says. Might be. You stopped the Yahello that came for me. Someone did. He looks at Taehyun. The patience of someone whose rank doesn't require him to be confrontational. I owe you, he says. The association would frame it as a formal obligation, emergency intervention without registration. Technically there are processes. Practically, someone saved my life and I want to know who. Taehyun considers this. Hyun-soo-an in the original timeline became one of the defining figures of the next era. Having him as an aware contact rather than a stranger is significant. My name is Kim Taehyun, he says. Third year at Gungguk High. Registered as awakened 2 months ago. A rank, unique skill type. The tournament winner. You watched? I heard. Devour. That's what they're calling your skill in the scout report. A pause. I've never seen that classification before. It's new. Another pause. Then Hyun-soo, who is clearly someone who has done the math and decided to be direct. What are you doing? Not just the school stuff. The Yahello information that reached the association. The Scorn Guild file. Someone has been feeding the right information to the right people for weeks. You move wrong for someone who just awakened. You fight like someone who's been doing it for years. Taehyun looks at him. I'm trying to stop some things from getting as bad as they're going to get, he says. That's the honest version. And the version that explains the gap is one I'm not ready to share completely. A quiet moment. Then, with the specific acceptance of someone who has dealt with enough of the world's inconsistencies to recognize when truth is being offered in an incomplete but accurate form. All right. He stands up from the wall. When you need an A- rank on your side, I'm available. He hands Taehyun a contact number and walks away. Taehyun looks at it. In his original timeline, Hyun-soo-an died in an S-rank gate event 2 years from now. Not because he lacked the ability to survive it, because he went in without the right information about what was inside. Taehyun has that information. He makes a note about when to use it. Devour's current growth 64%. He's been running the math obsessively. Each skill consumed contributes differently. Simple skills contribute small amount. Complex skills contribute more. Unique or rare abilities contribute disproportionately. The multi-element skill from Aeyong was the largest single absorption boost since the early dungeon runs. The jump to S rank requires Devour to reach 100% at this stage. He needs either many more mid-grade absorptions or a small number of high-grade ones. The problem with high-grade absorptions is access. S-rank abilities belong to the top tier of the player world. Names in the association's exceptional record. Guild aces. Individuals whose skill sets are their most guarded asset. You can't devour those in a tournament bracket. He's building toward it, but the timeline doesn't care about his development schedule. The next major incident in his original timeline's memory is approximately 45 days out. Not a gate break. Something that starts inside the player association itself. A faction dispute that becomes something worse. That pulls in external forces. That creates a vacuum in the city's organized response structure that the Abyss is going to exploit. 45 days. He calls Yu Sung-an. She picks up on the second ring. I'm ready to talk, he says. Same building, same office, same indoors sunglasses. What changed, she asks. Timeline, he says. Things are coming that I need support structure for. Not the guild's resources specifically. What I need is visibility. The ability to operate in association-level spaces without being flagged as unauthorized. She sits with this. Yu Sung-an processes things at speed but doesn't perform speech. She thinks and then speaks, and the interval is always appropriate to what's being discussed. You want guild affiliation without the guild's interference in your decisions, she says. Yes, that's not typically how affiliations work. I know. I'm asking for an exception. Why would I grant one? Because I've already proven that operating with full autonomy, I can do things that benefit the wider awakened community in ways your guild would take weeks and resources to accomplish. The Avellian information. The Scorn Guild file. That was me alone. No structure. Give me the structural legitimacy and the result scale. A long quiet. What's coming? She asks. He tells tells her, not everything, not the full picture, but enough of the shape of the faction dispute to make her understand that someone who knows the mechanics of internal association politics in granular detail is worth having on the right side before those mechanics become explosive. She asks how he knows. Trust the results I've already generated. Use those as the evidence for the question you're asking. She considers this for a long time. Then, you have guild affiliation. Full autonomy on operations you initiate. The guild provides cover, access, and resources on request. You report outcomes but not methods. A pause. And you tell me when something is coming that affects the guild directly. Not to interfere. To protect my people. Yes. Done. No handshake. She turns back to her desk. He shows himself out. He's Nightwalker affiliated now. Not a full member. More a protected independent under the guild's umbrella. But the access it provides unlocks the next phase of preparation. The association's faction dispute starts the way he remembered. Not dramatically. Not with declarations or confrontation. It starts with a series of administrative decisions, policy changes about rank registration threshold, authority over dungeon access tiers, resource allocation between established guilds and newer organizations. Small decision, each defensible individually, together forming a pattern that the people making them intend as a consolidation of power in specific hands. In the original timeline, Taehyun didn't know this was happening until it had already produced its worst consequences. He was a porter. This was guild leadership concern, not his. Now he's watching it from inside, through his Nightwalker affiliation, through stealth when affiliation isn't enough. The faction driving the consolidation, the supremacy faction. Awakened individuals who believe the current association management is too accommodating of lower rank users, too focused on protecting civilian structures rather than developing elite capacity. Their argument is internally consistent if you accept their premises, which makes them dangerous in the way that ideologically coherent movements are dangerous. They're not irrational. They're wrong about something specific, and that wrongness is going to cost the association the exact capacity it needs when the abyss pushes harder. Their leading figure is Ganghyuk Gwan, a rank player, and someone Taehyun knows from the original timeline the way you know someone who was important in events you witnessed from a distance. Ganghyuk Gwan is not a villain. That's the complicating thing. He's a genuine believer. He thinks the awakened world should prioritize its strongest individuals because those individuals are the only thing between humanity and the escalating abyss. He's not wrong about the threat escalating. He's wrong about the solution. In the original timeline, his consolidation attempt failed, but not before creating a structural crisis that left the association unable to respond effectively to two major gate events. Dozens of people died who didn't have to. Taehyun has 40 days. He starts building a counterfile. He meets Ganghyuk Gwan by circumstance, not truly accident. Taehyun doesn't end up in places by accident anymore, but by a chain of events he didn't fully control. A Nightwalker meeting that Yusung brought him to as a demonstration of the guild's reach, which overlapped with an association oversight committee meeting, which Ganghyuk Gwan attended as the supremacy faction's primary representative. They're in the same corridor afterward. Gwan coming out of the committee room, Taehyun heading toward it. Ganghyuk Gwan is bigger than he looks in association record. A rank physical development is that. He has the specific quality of combat veterans who've survived enough to develop genuine expertise. The absence of wasted motion in everything. How he stands, how he turns, how his attention moves. He looks at Taehyun. Nightwalker's new independent, he says. Not a question. He's been briefed. From the tournament. That's right. Gwan studies him. Your skill is devour. Growth type. He pauses. What's your current skill count? A specific question. He's asking because he's thinking about what devour builds over time, about the ceiling. More than when I registered, Taehyun says. Gwan almost smiled. That's going to become a problem for the people who want to contain it. I know. So do I. A B. The Avelian intelligent. The scorn information. That's either a very well-connected group or one person with knowledge they shouldn't have. Taehyun doesn't confirm or deny. I'm not against you, Gwan says. We have different ideas about how the association should be structured. That doesn't make us enemies. I know. That's why I haven't worked against you directly. This land. The admission that someone has been in a position to work against him directly and chose not to. He files it. The faction dispute ends badly, Taehyun says carefully. Not because your argument is wrong. Because the timing is wrong and the methods are creating structural vulnerability. The abyss is going to exploit those vulnerabilities in the next 6 weeks. Gwan goes very still. That's a specific claim, he says. Yes. How specific? Specific enough that I'm telling you rather than just working around you. Another long pause. The corridor is empty. This conversation doesn't have a clean institutional frame. What do you need? Gwan asks finally. Slow the consolidation. Not stop it. Slow it. Give the association 6 weeks to shore up the response structure before the administrative changes reduce its capacity. And if I do, the crisis that was going to cost you significantly doesn't happen the same way. He doesn't explain how he knows. Gwan doesn't ask. I'll think about it, Gwan says. He walks away. Taehyun watches him go. He doesn't know if Gwan will listen. In his original timeline, Ganghyuk Gwan was not someone who changed course easily, but he was also not someone who disregarded specific, credible warnings from someone who had demonstrated the capacity to back them up. He files it under uncertain, goes back to work on the other track. He knows the abyss, not in the way player textbooks describe it, not in the way the association's academic materials explain dimensional theory. He knows it the way you know a workplace you spent 15 years in, the specific smell of it, the weight of its air, the particular quality of dark that only exists on the other side of dimensional portals. Porters knew things about the abyss that the fighters they served didn't. They had to. You couldn't carry equipment through a dimensional space if you didn't understand how the space worked at the granular level, how mana density changed with depth, how certain environmental markers predicted monster density, how the geometry of abyssal spaces operated differently from the physical world geometry it overlaid. Taehyun spent 15 years accumulating that knowledge. In the original timeline, it sat mostly unused because he had no rank, no skill, and nowhere to apply it. Here, it's operational intelligence nobody in the registered player world has because registered players don't typically spend 15 years as porters. He's been using it in the gate break, in the dungeon grinding, in the mana sensing that identified the Yahello, but he hasn't fully confronted what it means in the context of what he now knows is coming. The abyssal event that's going to define this era isn't a gate break or a dungeon. It's something that in his original timeline was classified as a dimensional restructuring event. The boundary between the abyss and the physical world weakened in a specific area in a way qualitatively different from normal gate formation. More fundamental, more dangerous. He knows where it's going to happen. He knows when. He knows the approximate scale. And he knows that in the original timeline, the official response was inadequate because nobody with the right kind of experience, nobody who understood the abyss from the inside, at the worker level, was included in the planning. He has 30 days to fix that. He contacts Hyun-soo. I need you to get something in front of the association's crisis response committee, he says. Not a formal report, a consultation request from an independent source. He sends the technical analysis he's been building, written in porter experience language rather than player classification language, specific about location and projected scale and the response infrastructure that will be required, not claiming to know the future, framing it as environmental assessment based on observed mana pattern analysis. It's not inaccurate. The mana patterns are real. He can observe them. He's just not explaining that he can interpret them this specifically because he's already watched what they lead to. Hyun-soo reads it, calls back. This is very specific for mana pattern analysis, he says. I have more experience reading abyssal environments than my age suggests. A pause. Then Hyun-soo, who deals with the evidence in front of him rather than demanding explanations that aren't being offered. I'll get it to the committee. 3 weeks before the dimensional restructuring event, he goes back to the pocket dungeon. Not to grind, not to absorb, just to be in an abyssal space, alone, and think. He's been running at operational capacity for months, calculating, building, positioning, preparing. The work is never finished because the timeline keeps moving and every day he doesn't take creates a larger gap between where he is and where he needs to be. But tonight he just sits in the dungeon. The monsters, for once, he leaves alone. They scatter when they sense his A-rank mana output and don't return. The space settles around him. He thinks about the king, whoever that was, whatever that entity is, a man with crimson hair and red eyes who appeared through a gate that should have been impossible, stopped an SSS-rank monster with casual power, and did something to Taehyun at the moment of his death that sent him backward 16 years with a skill designed to make him the strongest awakened human alive. Why? The king said it might be fate, said something about a plan he wasn't fully disclosing, said to survive until they met again. The escalation of abyssal activity that Taehyun's been tracking, the pattern that in his original timeline killed him and countless others, isn't random. The abyssal world has a structure. It has entities within that structure with goals. Some of those goals involve human world access in ways that go beyond the simple territorial monster expansion that the association's models describe. In his original timeline, Taehyun never understood the architecture of the threat because he never had the standing to access the intelligence about it. But the things he's been seeing since the regression, the Yahellians operating with specific targeting rather than random predation, the dimensional restructuring event he's been tracking, the specific pattern of pressure the abyssal side seems to be applying to the human world's infrastructure, all of it points towards something deliberate. Someone or something on the abyssal side is making moves. The king, whoever that is, sent him back to make moves on the other side, with a skill designed to absorb and synthesize and grow, not just to survive, to become something capable of eventually meeting the abyssal threat on its own terms. He sits with this for a while. The dungeon air is damp and cold and smells of something that human chemistry doesn't have a name for. The darkness has has the specific quality of abyssal space, not the absence of light but the presence of a different kind of dark. He thinks about the 17 people who didn't die at the Gwangjin GU break this time. He thinks about Jae-young winning his first tournament match. He thinks about A-young Lim in the semi-final arena saying stop wasting my time. He thinks about Hyun-soo Ahn handing him a contact number. He thinks about all the people in all the futures he's carrying who didn't make it in the original version, whose names aren't in any official document but are recorded in him, in the way that 15 years of working alongside people in dangerous places writes them into you. He's going to fix it. Not all of it. The scale is too large for any single person, even a person with devour and future knowledge, but he's going to make it meaningfully better. He's going to remove the worst of the unnecessary death. He's going to build the infrastructure the original timeline never had. And somewhere in the future, when the timeline advances far enough, he's going to meet the king again and find out what this was actually for. He stands up, activates stealth, walks out of the dungeon. 30 days until the restructuring event. Devour at 64%. 3 institutional tracks active and running. 4 key relationships built and functional. The work continues. Here is what Taehyun has been building, laid out plainly. Not a guild, not a team in the formal sense. A network, a set of relationships and information channels and operational agreements that allows people working in parallel toward compatible goals to coordinate without the overhead of institutional bureaucracy. Each node in the network is competent in a specific way. Each node knows what they need to know and not more. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts in ways that no individual piece can fully see. At the center, Taehyun, a rank devour growth type, foreknowledge of the original timeline's disaster catalog, Porter experience reading abyssal spaces that no registered player has. Adjacent to the center, Yusung On's Nightwalker Guild, which provides institutional legitimacy and resource access without imposing operational constraint. Hyun-soo On, who provides a rank combat capacity and association standing. Jae-young Won, whose dream ability is developing in directions that the standard classification system doesn't have frameworks for, pointed at something nobody told him to look at. In the broader circle, A-young Lim, whose trajectory is heading toward S-rank development and whose tactical intelligence makes her more valuable per unit of power than most people at her current level. Ganghyuk Gwan, who is still building his faction but building it more carefully now than he did before. Monitoring, Chairman Jin Hee-ji's office, which doesn't know it's being used as an information relay but is receiving the right information through the right channels to make better decisions than it would otherwise make. He looks at this network the same way he looked at his status page after the first successful devour, with the specific satisfaction of seeing something that exists because he built it, that didn't exist before he started. In his original timeline, when the cascade of events that ultimately killed him began to unfold, there was no network. There was no coordination. There were individual players operating in their own channels, guilds protecting their institutional interests, an association struggling under the weight of internal faction dispute, and an abyssal side that had been deliberately engineering all of those vulnerabilities for exactly this moment. This timeline has something different. Not enough yet. He knows it in the specific way that someone with foreknowledge knows the gap between preparation and what's actually coming, but more than the original timeline had. The approaching restructuring event will be the first real test of everything he's built. He's ready, or as ready as you can be when you know what's on the other side of ready. 30 days until the restructuring event. He reviews every piece in place. The committee has his analysis. Hyun-soo has been briefed. Yusung Park's guild members know a critical event is coming. Jae-young has been told to stay clear of the area. A-young Lim, whose multi-element skill now sits in his absorption catalog rather than her skill slot, which he's already planning to address at the right moment, is likewise positioned safely away. He goes over it all one more time, then he sets it aside. There is a version of the world where everything goes according to plan and a version where the plan survives contact with the event. Taehyun has lived through enough dangerous situations to know that the difference between those versions is rarely a better plan. It's a better person executing the plan. Someone who can adjust when the unexpected happens because they've internalized the principles well enough that the specific details don't matter. He's been building that person too. Since the first morning he woke up in his 19-year-old body. Every dungeon run, every absorption, every conversation and relationship and choice made with the understanding that what he's doing is not just accumulating power, it's becoming someone capable of using it when it matters. 30 years of nothing, followed by one death, followed by 16 years of knowledge, and now this. A 20-year-old body that moves like a veteran, a skill list that no classification system can properly account for, and a network of people who trust him for reasons they don't entirely understand but that he has worked very hard to earn. He closes his status page, gets some sleep. Tomorrow the restructuring event begins. The dimensional restructuring manifests at 2:47 a.m. In the original timeline, it manifested at 3:15 a.m. The 28-minute difference is meaningful. It means the event was slightly accelerated, possibly because the abyssal side's operational timeline has been disrupted by Taehyun's intervention. Things he did changed thing. The downstream effects of those changes include a restructuring event that doesn't hit exactly when he expected. He files this under the timeline is drifting. Plan for variant. The event is not a standard gate break. There's no clean rift opening, no single point of entry. The dimensional boundary in a 3-block radius of the industrial zone node simply becomes permeable, thin, unstable. The specific quality of space that Taehyun recognizes from 15 years of working near dimensional interfaces is deeply wrong. Entities begin coming through from multiple points simultaneously, not the single origin rush of a gate break but a dispersed emergence across the unstable zone. The entities that come through a dimensional restructuring event are not standard dungeon monsters. They're abyssal construct beings made of condensed dimensional energy rather than biological matter, carrying ability sets that reflect the specific nature of abyssal space rather than the evolutionary patterns of creatures that evolve within it. Their powers are strain, control type, mostly space manipulation, environmental distortion, the kind of abilities that standard combat players struggle against because the counter tactics for biological monsters don't translate. For Devour, these are exactly what he needs. He activates stealth and enters the unstable zone. The next 40 minutes are the most productive sustained absorption session he's had since the regression. Construct after construct, each one carrying abilities that Devour processes into his skill list. Space disruption, dimensional anchor, the ability to stabilize a section of unstable dimensional space around himself, incredibly useful in this context. A control-type mana compression skill that Devour categorizes as a rank exceptional. His Devour percentage climbs 70%, 75%, 80%. The physical feedback is continuous, his stats updating in real time with each absorption, the specific sensation of power accumulating in layers rather than leaps. At the 80% mark, the event escalates. In the original timeline, this was the point where the association's response team lost containment. The restructuring event generated a secondary wave that pushed the unstable zone out by half a kilometer. This was when people died. Taehyun is already inside the expanded zone when the secondary wave hit. He plants a dimensional anchor and holds position while the wave passes over him. The unstable space crashes around the anchor like water around a stone. It works. He remains functional while the space between him and the perimeter becomes actively hostile. He's cut off from the association's response team, which means he's alone in an expanded unstable zone with whatever the escalated event is sending through. He encounters it at the center of the expanded zone, a restructuring class entity, something that the association will classify after the fact as an A-rank exceptional construct with environmental control abilities that have no precedent in their record. The combat is genuinely hard, not because the entity is more powerful than anything he's faced individually. His A-rank physical combined with the skill stack he's built is enough to match its output, but because it fights in ways that his porter instincts and combat experience, built around physical monster behavior, aren't perfectly tuned for. It uses the unstable dimensional space as a weapon, warping geometry, creating pockets of compressed mana, generating environmental effects that are unpredictable in ways that biological monsters aren't. He takes damage, real damage, stone skin working overtime to absorb hits that come from angles his training didn't fully prepare him for. He takes it and keeps moving and keeps reading the entity's behavior the way he reads everything, with the patience of someone who knows that every observable pattern is information. He's at 89% Devour when he has the entity positioned correctly. The consumption is the longest and most complex Devour he's executed. The entity's ability set is layered in ways that simple absorptions aren't, and the processing takes 40 seconds instead of 5, during which he has to hold position with dimensional anchor while the entity tries to break the contact. He hold, the anchor hold, the consumption runs to completion. Devour complete. Dimensional control, a rank exceptional, acquired. Devour experience, 98%, 2% short of the threshold. He looks at his status window, 2%. He has the dimensional control ability, the most significant single absorption of his regression, something that doesn't exist in the association's classification record, and he's 2% away from the rank transition he's been building toward. The entity goes down without its ability. He takes the last available construct in the zone, a smaller one, residual, carrying a minor spatial disruption passive, and consumes it. Devour experience, 100%. Rank adjustment, a right-pointing arrow S. Physical stats updated. Mana capacity updated. All skill power levels adjusted to S-rank baseline. S-rank. The notification arrives at 4:23 a.m. in the middle of a destabilizing industrial zone, with the dawn not yet showing on the horizon, and Taehyun Kim, 35 years old and dead and 19 years old and standing, reads it twice. S-rank. He's never been anything before, and now he's this. The association's response team finds the stabilized zone at 5:30 a.m. The dimensional restructuring event has resolved. The unstable zone has collapsed. The constructs that came through are either gone or down. The industrial zone is damaged. Structural structural damage to 3 buildings. Surface mana burn on the street grid for 2 blocks, but the civilian exposure is minimal because Taehyun spent 40 minutes directing construct movement away from the residential geometry before the secondary wave cut him off. No casualties, not one. Hyun-soo-an, who was at the outer perimeter and saw the secondary wave expand the unstable zone beyond what standard containment could handle, calls at 6 a.m. He picks up. You were inside when the secondary wave hit, Hyun-soo says. Yes. You held the zone. Yes. A pause. Are you hurt? He takes stock. Stone Skin took real damage. His mana is significantly depleted. His body is tired in the specific way that S-rank transition leave, the adjustment period where everything has updated and the physical reality is still catching up. I need to sleep, he says. I'm fine. Another pause. I saw your devour notification cascade in the association's awakened activity monitoring. It flagged at S-rank. Is that? Yes, he says. Silent. All right, Hyun-soo says. Then we need to talk about what comes next. He agrees. Ends the call. Sits down on the curb in the industrial zone with the early light starting to come over the buildings and his new S-rank status sitting in his system like a weight that's also a tool. What comes next? He's been asking that question since he woke up in his 19-year-old body. He has more answers to it now than he did then. More resources, more relationship, more power, and a much clearer picture of the shape of the thing he's been building toward. What comes next is the part where the abyssal side notices that the human world's response capacity has an S-rank player it didn't previously account for. What comes next is the part where the entities on the abyssal side that have been making deliberate moves have to adjust their planning. What comes next is harder. Good. He's been waiting for something hard enough to matter since he was 19 years old the first time. And that's where we'll leave it. 35 chapters in. Kim Taehyun, dead at 35, alive at 19, S-rank and growing, carrying the weight of futures that nobody else knows are coming. He has a skill that the world never expected in the hands of someone like him. Growth type, no recorded ceiling. Every ability consumed makes everything else stronger. The most patient man in the awakened world, because he's already lived the version where patience doesn't get you anything, and this version is the proof that it does. He has knowledge, not perfect knowledge. The timeline has been drifting since day one of the regression, accumulating differences from every choice he's made, every death he's prevented, every relationship he's built that didn't exist in the original version. He has direction, not a map. And in a world this dangerous, direction is enough. He has people, not many, not an army, but the right one. Yu Sung-on's Nightwalker umbrella, Hyun-soo-on's combat capacity and his light, which he still has because Taehyun was in the right alley at the right time. Ayoung Lim's tactical mind, tracking everything, running calculation, becoming exactly who the original timeline never gave her the context to be. Jae-young Wang's dream ability, developing into something the classification system doesn't have frameworks for, pointed in a direction nobody told him to look. Ganghyuk Gwan, who is still building his faction but building it more carefully now than he did before. He has the king's purpose. Become, the king will eventually tell him. As if becoming were a destination rather than a process. As if there were a version of Kim Taehyun, not the one who died without a skill, not the one who survived by luck and timing, but a third version, the one that neither timeline has produced yet, that the king had already seen the shape of. He's working on becoming that. The Death Knight Lord is waiting in his future. The dimensional restructuring event was only the beginning. The Scorn Guild's investigation is running. The Supremacy faction's consolidation is slowed. The Evelian network in New Korea has been significantly disrupted. 17 people who were supposed to die in a gate break are still alive. And the abyssal side has noticed that something changed. The entities that have been making deliberate moves against the human world's infrastructure are recalibrating. They have a picture of who's responsible, not a complete one, not yet, but enough. Which means what comes next is them making moves specifically designed for Kim Taehyun. Good. He's been waiting for something that's actually trying to stop him. Everything up to now has just been warm-up. The king said fate. Taehyun never believed in fate, not through 35 years of its complete absence from his life. But he believes in this, the version of him that's standing here now. S-rank, network prepared, genuinely dangerous for the first time in any version of his existence, was not an accident. It was built. Choice by choice, absorption by absorption, relationship by relationship, death by death that he prevented because he was in the right place with the right knowledge at the right time. That's not fate. That's work. He has more of it to do.